I want to welcome you today to a meeting about this class struggle in Korea, some of the labor battles that are going on, what's facing the working class there, and activity in the working class. The United Front Committee for a Labor Party is an organization which is based on the need for working people to unite around class struggle issues, against privatization, against union busting, against imperialist war and fascism. And we believe that the fight for a workers' party, a labor party, is not just an American struggle, but it's also an international struggle. There need to be workers' parties in every country of the world, and this political vacuum is dangerous for working people. So in the unions in the United States are basically pro-imperialist, pro-capitalist, and they're supporting wars and they're supporting Zionism. So we have a political task to organize in the working class for a workers' party, democratically run, and we support a program of workers' control of energy, of utilities, of the banks for that workers' party. At the same time, workers are coming up in opposition to the union bureaucracy in the United States. Workers are angry at union bureaucrats who are basically selling them out. And the clearest example of that was the recent UPS strike, United Parcel Service, where Sean O'Brien, the president of the union, said that they had a victory, and he actually said that they had stopped AI and robots and defended the workers. In reality, not only did they not get their basic $25 an hour, which they called for, but they allowed UPS to lay off thousands of workers through automation. Most of these workers are part-time workers. So this struggle in the unions is critical, and we're for a united front, and on May Day, we're supporting UPS workers around the country taking action at UPS facilities. The union leadership has refused to issue a statement, and also the Teamsters for a Democratic Union are refusing to take up a fight against layoffs. So we're calling for workers at UPS to refuse to do overtime, to not work double shifts, and to force the company to hire more workers. But there has to be a national campaign. And a central issue, of course, is AI. Our view is that AI is an existential threat to the working class. Goldman Sachs has said that 350 million workers could lose their jobs. The union bureaucracy do not want to educate workers about the threat of AI, and they don't want to unite all kinds of workers who are facing AI, because it means not just a fight against the company, but it's a fight against the industry and the system. The capitalists in the United States are putting billions of dollars into AI to get rid of workers. That's the driving force of the development of AI, to reduce the number of workers. So this means that this is a more and more attack on workers, and there has to be a political challenge to it. The Democrats and Republicans are not going to stop AI. The Democrats are controlled by the same billionaires in the AI and in tech. So it's another reason for workers that we need to have a mass working class political party. And the other thing that we talk about today is Palestine, because the struggle in Palestine is a critical struggle for the working class. And we support a mass workers' movement to blockade. And this is, again, a fight against the union bureaucracy, which is refusing to oppose Zionism. In fact, they're blocking even a discussion on Zionism and Israel at the San Francisco Labor Council. So 10 years ago, in 2014, there was a protest here in San Francisco at the Korean consulate to demand the release of Korean trade unionists. And we had 125 workers here in San Francisco, activists and others, at the Korean consulate demanding the release of trade unionists who were jailed and in support of the general strike. And that was one of the largest protests for Korean workers held in the United States. And we understood that the fight of the Korean workers, their general strike, should be supported by workers all over the world, including in the United States. The United States supports the Korean government, and the United States right now is trying to militarize Korea and crush any opposition in the working class. So I think that record of fighting to defend the Korean working class is important for workers today. So Ho-Joon is a member of the Korean Railway Workers Union and has been in jail before fighting for the union, and was formerly the secretary of the Korean KCTU in Seoul region. So welcome.
My name is Ho-Joon. I am a rail worker, strike many times, is fighting against rail privatization. We will struggle against rail company. And if you have any question, later I will answer.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to have the opportunity to explain the class struggle and workers' fight in South Korea. I'm Seok, a socialist with long-time activities, especially with militant rank-and-file workers in Ulsan. Have you heard about Ulsan? The city of Hyundai, Hyundai motor car, Hyundai shipbuilding, The city is the most industrialized city in South Korea, and has been the epicenter of the Korean workers' movement for a long time, since 1987. I'm a member of a socialist organization and a member of a national workers' meeting to restore grassroots struggles and realize working class solidarity, a militant rank-and-file organization, mainly based in the metal industry, including motor car, auto parts, shipbuilding, steelmaking, electronics, etc. Before talking about the workers' fight, let me begin with the unique characteristics of Korean capitalism and class struggle. As you may know, the Korean War from 1950 to 53 destroyed the entire workers' movement and all kinds of left movements, allowing the Korean capitalists to exploit and oppress the workers to a very high degree. From the 1950s to 70s, the United States provided South Korea with extraordinary economic and military aid in the context of the Cold War. These factors allowed Korean capitalism to take off as one of the so-called four Asian tigers in the 1970s and 80s. After the breakdown of the Cold War in the 1990s, Korean capitalism was forced to survive in the highly competitive world market without the previous patronage from the United States. Korean capitalism reformed the structure of exploitation with the neoliberal ideology and the labor flexibilization strategy, re-equipping itself with a highly competitive hyper-exploitation system, which is especially by making irregular workers its main labor force. Irregular workers means non-regular workers with various forms. Korean capitalism, as the geographically closest and technologically more developed economy to China, took advantage of the rise of Chinese economy in the context of the US-China honeymoon of globalization. As a result, Korean capitalism was able to experience several decades of consecutive growth despite some moments of crisis. But the quantitative growth of Korean capitalism, based on highly intensive exploitation and oppression, was accompanied by the qualitative misery of Korean society. The rapid growth of Korean capitalism has brought a significant increase in the real wage of the working masses. However, the terrible neglect and repression of workers' rights resulted in the longest working hours in the world, the highest rate of fatal occupational accidents, the highest proportion of irregular workers, the widest gender wage gap. Now, under the midst of economic growth from one of the poorest countries to a developed country in just a few decades, Korean society is experiencing the world's worst suicide rate, the highest elderly poverty rate, and the lowest fertility rate. In particular, as you may know, the world's lowest fertility rate, which recorded only 0.72 in 2023, is so low as to seriously threaten the sustainability of society itself. The notorious exploitation and oppression have made the Korean worker struggle highly militant and dynamic as it reflects. The Great Strike Wave of 1987 and the General Strike of 1996 to 97, which demonstrated the revolutionary potential of the Korean working class, attracted the attention of many workers and socialists around the world. The 1987 Great Strike Wave was the starting point of the independent trade union movement as a mass movement. From July to September 1987, there were more than 3,000 strikes with 1.2 million participants. Almost all of them were illegal and wildcat strikes. And in most cases, the workers occupied their factories in a very militant way. As a result of the strike wave, about 1,000 new democratic unions were formed at the workplace level. The process of uniting democratic unions at the regional and then national levels, overcoming the harsh repression of the military dictatorship, finally led to the building of the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions, KCTU, the National Center of Democratic Trade Unions in 1995. The 1996 to 97 general strike against the neoliberal labor reform unfolded for 24 days with 150,000 to 350,000 participants each day. The general strike was much stronger than the number of participants because it covered the most important sectors of Korean capitalism. It didn't achieve its goal, but it managed to change the relationship between classes to some extent. The participation of hundreds of thousands of workers in the month-long general strike led to a massive consciousness of themselves as the working class. However, the suppression of workers' basic rights, such as the right to organize, bargain, and strike through various bad labor laws, has kept the rate of unionization very low and made the workers who lead or even participate in the struggles face extreme adversity. The suppression of freedom of thought through the national security law has severely hindered the Korean working masses from developing working class consciousness toward socialism. As a result, the Korean workers' movement has a unique characteristic, a structural imbalance between dynamic mass struggle and fragile class consciousness. Now let me move on to the current political situation and the task of building a general strike for workers' urgent demands. As the crisis of capitalism deepens, we are seeing the rise of the far right and authoritarianism in many parts of the world. The workers and people of South Korea are also fighting against this trend. Recently, South Korea had a general election just a week ago, less than a week ago, in which the right-wing Yoon Suk-yeol administration was harshly judged for its far-right tendencies. Over the past 2 years, the Yoon administration has pursued blatantly pro-capitalist policies in various aspects, such as taxation, real estate regulation, and labor policies. It has also pursued hardline pro-US and pro-Japanese policies that have led to increased tensions on the Korean Peninsula. Deteriorating relations with China have further depressed economic growth, and the persistent inflation has exacerbated the suffering of ordinary people. Most importantly, the government has severely attacked workers and unions. It strongly cracked down on a strike by the truck drivers' union, which was demanding an expansion of the standard fare system, a kind of minimum wage. It has called the construction union gangsters. The government has called the construction union gangsters and detained more than 40 workers. The government vowed to introduce a new system that would increase the work week to 69 hours. In this general election, the ruling People Power Party won only 36% of the seats. So this government is in a state of crisis, big crisis, that could lead to impeachment, similar to the Park Geun-hye government in 2016, very similar situation. The working masses and people have strongly judged the right-wing government. However, the judgment against the right-wing regime came in the form of supporting center-right candidates. The center-right, including the Democratic Party, won a landslide victory, taking 62% of the seats. The problem is that the center-right is not a party for the working class. The center-right has a more sophisticated face and appears to be more conciliatory to workers, but it is ultimately on the side of the capitalist. It is the party of the capitalist and for the capitalist. For example, the Democratic Party does not support the expansion of the standard fare system demanded by the truck drivers' union, the strikers. The crackdown on construction union began under the previous center-right government, not only in the right-wing government, it already began in the previous government. In light of this government's crisis, it is worth looking back at the events surrounding the impeachment of Park Geun-hye in 2016 to 17. A year before the massive candlelight protest in 2016 to 17 that led to Park's impeachment, there was a general strike by the KCTU. It was a struggle against the Park regime's labor reforms, which included a performance-based pay differential system and the liberalization of dismissals. The liberalization of firing dismissals. When the general strike began in 2015, the Park government was in a strong position. Although the Park government had been transforming society in a far-right direction in many areas, the fear associated with being the daughter of the military dictator Park Chung-hee made it difficult for people to resist. The KCTU general strike was not very successful, but it created a crack in the regime's fortress by making people realize that they could fight back against the Park regime. The massive candlelight protest of 2016 to 17 were able to erupt by breaking through the cracks created by the KCTU general strike. So, in the early days of the candlelight protest, the KCTU was at the center. The masses wanted to remove Park from office through the power of mass struggle rather than relying on impeachment. In other words, bourgeois procedures. Because the outcome of impeachment is uncertain. This would have been possible if the KCTU had unfolded a strong general strike to force Park to resign. In fact, the KCTU called for a general strike, but it failed due to a lack of momentum on the ground. The Democratic Party then pushed for impeachment and succeeded. In the end, the Democratic Party became the winner of the candlelight protests. After the candlelight protests, the Democratic Party government stopped the labor reforms promoted by the Park government. However, it refused to make improvements to change the poor lives of irregular workers. It promised a significant increase in the minimum wage, but only raised it by a smaller amount than previous right-wing governments. It opposed changes in the labor laws to guarantee irregular workers to full right to organize, bargain, and strike. It failed to curb real estate speculation, which caused housing prices to skyrocket. The working masses and people, frustrated with the Democratic Party government, finally chose the right-wing candidate. Only after the impeachment, only 5 years after the impeachment, the working masses and people chose again right-wing candidate in the 2022 presidential election. The right-wing government is now in crisis again, only 2 years later. If the judgment on this government comes down to the return of the Democratic Party to power, nothing will fundamentally change. We believe that the KCTU, the Democratic Trade Union movement, should take up the struggle against the right-wing government in its own way with its own demands. The key is to organize a powerful general strike for the urgent demands of the working class, especially the irregular workers, such as a significant increase in the minimum wage and the revision of the labor law to fully guarantee the right to organize, bargain, and strike. If there are some time later, I would like to explain more about the disparities between regular workers and irregular workers and its importance in the class struggle in South Korea. Now, let me move on to our task to build international anti-imperialist, anti-war struggle of the working class. Globalization, which has shifted the capitalist production base from developed countries to emerging countries, has changed the power relations among capitalist states. On top of this, with the deepening of the capitalist crisis, the desire of the old and new imperialist powers for geographical expansion, for more super exploitation and expropriation has intensified. This has inevitably intensified the imperialist hegemonic confrontation, especially between the USA and China. In this context, the war in Ukraine has been going on for more than 2 years as a proxy war between the US-NATO alliance and the China-Russia alliance. Israel, which is fundamentally supported by the US-EU imperialist powers, is committing genocide in Gaza and provoking a wider war across the Middle East. We cannot say where, when, or how big the next war will be. We cannot say how many wars will break out, but what is clear is that the world is now moving toward serious wars between imperialist powers. Perhaps proxy wars rather than direct wars because of the formidable nuclear arsenals. Of course, there are many obstacles and contradictions on the way to serious wars, but the trend is clear. In particular, East Asia could be the main battlefield. Taiwan has become the sharpest flashpoint in the hegemonic confrontation between the US and China. The confrontation between the US-Japan-South Korea alliance and the China-Russia-North Korea alliance has been formed around the Korean Peninsula, exchanging harsh rhetoric, large-scale war games, and constant missile launches. Under these circumstances, the only solution to block the war should be massive anti-imperialist, anti-war struggles of the working class, armed with international solidarity, such as international anti-imperialist, anti-war general strikes. To build such struggles, we are organizing our activities in two directions. First, we are trying to build an anti-imperialist, anti-war workers' movement in South Korea. Recently, we have jointly organized many campaigns in support of the liberation of Palestine, demanding an immediate ceasefire and an end to genocide in Gaza. We are fighting against the Korean government's export of weapons to Israel. We are fighting against the Hyundai Construction Equipment's export of excavators to Israel. The excavators have been used in West Bank to destroy the houses of Palestinians, to expand their settlers' areas. Above all, we are committed to organizing workers into these campaigns, even though the numbers are still relatively small. We will try to develop these struggles into anti-imperialist, anti-war struggles against the US, Japan, South Korea alliance, against the China, Russia, North Korea alliance around the Korean Peninsula by organizing more and more workers based on internationalism, not nationalism. Second, we are trying to meet with socialist and revolutionary workers to discuss the possibility of joint effort to build massive international anti-imperialist, anti-war struggles of the working class. Actually, this is the main reason why I came here. We came here to meet all of you comrades. Yeah. If there are some time, I would like to explain about the recent conflicts on healthcare problems. Yeah. If there's some problems.
Healthcare problems.
Healthcare problems. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe we can talk about that.
Yeah.
You want to talk now?
Now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Yeah. As you may know, there have been more than 2 months of trainee doctor strikes. But actually, it is not a strike, but the collective resignation of their positions. And all other doctors are supporting their strike. It was one of important factors that affected the general election. So now let me explain about this conflict. Let me explain about the overall healthcare system in South Korea. The healthcare system in South Korea is between the European style public style and the American private style. There is a universal healthcare insurance system, but private hospitals account for 88% of the medical system in terms of the number of patient beds. Let me see the universal healthcare insurance first. Thanks to universal healthcare insurance, you can call emergency vehicles and go to emergency rooms without worrying about economic burden. Yeah. Different from the United States. Yeah. However, universal healthcare insurance covers only 65% of total medical costs on average. So if you suffer from critical cancers or rare diseases, you could go bankrupt. Many medical inspections and hospitalized patient carings are out of the cover of universal healthcare insurance. These gaps have allowed financial companies to largely benefit from developing private healthcare insurance. There is one more thing I must add. Foreigners and migrants account for about 5% of the total population in South Korea. About half of foreigners and migrants are excluded from the universal healthcare system, largely because they are undocumented. Yeah. So if you are an undocumented migrant or you don't have a visa with more than a 6 months stay permit, you cannot have a universal healthcare insurance card. So you have to pay American-style ridiculous medical costs. How about the private hospitals? Yeah, private hospitals account for most of the medical systems. According to the law, private hospitals are prohibited from pursuing profits. But in reality, private hospitals have grown as a healthcare industry with huge profits. Yeah. In the case of big-size private hospitals, they can reap more profits from outside the cover of universal healthcare insurance. So they have competitively introduced and developed high-tech medical inspections and cutting-edge surgery methods. Robot surgery, etc. Yeah. Not to mention, they have sharply increased the burden of patients with severe diseases. In the case of small-sized private hospitals, there have been significant disproportionalities among medical specialties. More and more doctors have become plastic surgeons or skincare doctors in the pursuit of more profits. Conversely, cardiothoracic surgeons, who are commonly called the doctors of doctors, have been under severe deficiency. Yeah. There are too many plastic surgeons and skincare doctors, but yeah. It is because they are more arduous but less profitable, yeah, becoming cardiothoracic surgeons. Pediatricians also are suffering from reduced profits due to a sharp shrinking birth rate. So considerable pediatricians are changing their medical specialties from pediatricians to skincare doctors. Yeah. Even some big-size hospitals have difficulties recruiting cardiothoracic surgeons or pediatricians. Another big medical disproportionality is among Seoul and other countryside provinces. Now in South Korea, among 250 municipalities, 48 rural municipalities don't have any maternity hospitals, and 105 rural and small urban municipalities don't have any maternity hospitals capable of treating giving birth. Aside from this, 58 municipalities don't have any pediatrics. Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah. Also, in the case of other necessary medical specialties, rural areas are suffering from severe deficiencies. This is basically because of the fact that doctors don't want to live in rural areas because of less pay and the worse education environment. So on this background, the trainee doctor strike has unfolded. They are strongly against the right-wing Yoon government's medical enrollment expansion policy. Medical enrollment expansion. Currently, 3,500 a year totally, but the government policy is adding 2,000, new 2,000 enrollment. However, most people are considering that increasing the number of doctors is the most basic starting point to tackle healthcare-related social problems in South Korea. Even though it is pursued by the right-wing government, this medical enrollment expansion is necessary. Yeah. And it is true. Yeah. So we don't consider the current trainee doctor strike in South Korea as a part of the worker struggle. Its nature is different from the recent junior doctor strike in the UK or other countries. Yeah. Especially in the case of UK, as far as we know, the junior doctor strike has been led by unions, such as the British Medical Association, which is a trade union and professional association for doctors and medical students. And the strike has aimed to raise their wages, just like their fellow workers, such as nurses, consultants, and radiographers. At a time when inflation has inflicted big backward on their real wages. So we consider the junior doctor strike in the UK as a part of worker struggle. But in South Korea, the trainee doctor strike, so-called strike, is led by the typical professional association of trained doctors, never a trade union, and they really don't want to become a union. Yeah. And most importantly, they represent the antisocial interest of doctors as the most privileged specialists in South Korea, not as workers. So all other healthcare workers in hospitals don't agree with their resignations. Becoming a doctor in South Korea is considered a great success for an individual's career and income. Doctors consist of some part of capitalists or the highest layer of the petty bourgeoisie. Most trainee doctors consider the increase in the number of doctors as a decrease in their future income. And they don't pay attention to the overall healthcare conditions in society. And unfortunately, this is not the first time that doctors waged a strike with antisocial demands in South Korea. For the last quarter of a century, Korean society has witnessed antisocial doctor strikes at least 3 times of big strikes. Yeah, therefore, we cannot support, and most of people cannot support the trainee doctors' strike. But we have to talk about the nature of the right-wing government's policy. Yeah. This government is really representing the right-wing section of the capitalist. So, why is this government pushing this policy at this time? It can be easily explained by its intention to utilize this issue as a populist, right-wing populist for the general election. Yeah. But he totally failed. Yeah. Actually, the government managed to raise its approval rate a little with this policy in January and February, but the approval rating became down again. Yeah, and as I said, doctors are in the center of the capitalist, so they're angry. The angry of doctors really harmed this government in the general election. In the contrast of the government's calculation, yeah, they failed. Yeah. So the government's policy, the medical enrollment expansion, doesn't include any further measurement to tackle healthcare-related social problems. Yeah. Yeah, of course, this government can't do that. They only used this issue as a right-wing populist. So now let me tell you the alternative of the working class, in our opinion. The healthcare system in South Korea should be reformed into a complete public healthcare system for free healthcare for everyone. Yeah. We don't need private healthcare insurance and private hospitals. So all of them should be confiscated to universal healthcare insurance and public hospitals. We need more doctors with proper proportionalities among medical specialties and municipalities. So increasing the number of doctors is a mere starting point. Right. If we don't reform the total healthcare system, the increase of doctors will only lead to the fostering of private hospitals' profitability. So we should go forward to a complete public healthcare system for free healthcare for all. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you for that presentation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, we'll open it up for discussions or comments.
I just have some questions.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
준석, please. Yeah.
Okay. And then you said you were with a socialist organization?
Yeah.
What's
Yeah, my organization's name is March to Socialism. March to Socialism.
Marching to Socialism.
March.
March to socialism.
March to Socialism.
Yes.
And so one of my questions is very much related to what you talk about, how all of these parties are capitalist parties. So what are you doing to fight so that the working class is a party that represents its interests? Some of the things that Steve talked about in terms of a labor party, but we have to understand that,
Yes.
yeah, what we need is a party that genuinely represents the working class. For example, we have a Labour Party in England, as you well know, under Stammer, that not only is totally backing the U.S.-Israel genocide in Gaza, but is very hostile to, for example, basic demands that would save the healthcare service. So how do you make this distinction in your fight for a party?
Yes.
As I understand, it's like there would have been nothing to vote for in this election, or was there something to vote for in the last election?
Okay.
Yeah. In order to explain my organization's activities, I'd like to explain more about the overall progressive forces, including reformist parties. Here, it will be helpful. Here. Yeah. After the general strike in 1996 to 97, the KCTU decided to build a workers' party based on the big awareness of working masses as a working class. But unfortunately, at the time, the overwhelming portion of political activists were reformist. So the first workers' party in South Korea was built as a reformist party. In 2000, the name of the party was the Democratic Labor Party. The party is very important in the history of Korean workers' movement. To cut the long story short, yeah, the Democratic Party was closed down in 2012, split to several parties. So nowadays, there are three reformist parties. So now I will explain about the three reformist parties. The first one is the Progressive Party. The Progressive Party, progressive.
Okay.
Yes. This party is based on pro-North Korean nationalities. Pro-North Korean radical nationalism. Yes. I think they are not the Stalinists. They are a kind of radical nationalists. Yeah. They pursue national liberation as their main cause. National liberation and the reunification of North and South Korea. So they are commonly referred to as NL, National Liberation Tendency, NL tendency. The NL tendency has formed the majority of the labor, peasant, and student movement since the 1980s. In the 1980s, there was a really big student movement at the time in my generation, our generation, and most of our generation student movement activists became NL tendency. Yeah, so NL tendency still have their organizational power. It currently controls the executive body of the KCTU. But compared to its organizational power, it has suffered from poor electoral results in bourgeois elections before this election, with one deputies, parliamentary members, due to strong public opposition to North Korea. The NL tendency looks embarrassed and confused about how to interpret and respond to the North Korean leaders, the Kim Jong-un leader's recent declaration that he will no longer promote the reunification of the Korean Peninsula. Have you heard about that? Yeah. The The second reformist party is the Justice Party. This party advocates Western-style social democracy. It has maintained about 5 to 6 seats before this election, but is now in crisis and losing popular support due to a series of opportunity moves. I will explain later. And before this election, many of its members have defected and joined bourgeois parties. The party merged with the Green Party, the small party, the Green Party, which had a similar character, but they failed this general election. The third reformist party is the Labour Party, the smallest one. This party follows the neo-reformist line, Western in the standard Western parties. And this party is the smallest one, so has no seats. Since the building of the Democratic Labour Party, DLP, the KCTU has supported workers' parties. So first DLP, and then Progressive Party, the Justice Party, Labour Party, or sometimes plus Green Party. All these parties were supported by the KCTU. I will explain now about the situation before this general election, before after this general election. The Social Democratic Justice Party, which previously held 6 seats, but did not win a single seat this time. The Justice Party has walked a tightrope in its relationship with Democratic Party. It has pursued a strategy in which it pretends as an independent force, but aligns itself with the Democratic Party at crucial moments to gain votes from center-right supporters. It is quite a ridiculous strategy. However, when the right-wing president was elected in the last presidential election in 2022 by a margin of 0.7%, less than the 2.3% that the Justice Party candidate received. Democratic Party supporters believed that the right-wing president was elected because of the Justice Party candidate. The candidate was not resigned, so the right-wing president was elected. And there was a widespread sentiment among the central-right supporters that they would no longer vote for the Justice Party. So the Justice Party, which won 9.7% of the vote in the 2020 general election, received only 2.1% of the vote in this election and won no seats. The party's strategy of trying to grow by hovering on the periphery of the Democratic Party finally ended in bankruptcy. On the other hand, the radical nationalist Progressive Party, the NL tendency, had wanted to form an electoral alliance with the Democratic Party for a long time, but had been rebuffed by the Democratic Party because of NL tendencies pro-North Korean image. And this time, however, the Democratic Party paved the way for an electoral alliance, and the NL tendency jumped on board. The Progressive Party formed a joint from the joint provisional party with the Democratic Party for the proportional representation election. About 1/6 of seats are elected by proportional representation, and 5/6 seats are elected by districts. Yeah. And the Progressive Party unified candidates with the Democratic Party in all districts. As a result, the Progressive Party won 1 district seat and 2 proportional seats. So now they have 3 seats in the parliament. The Labour Party, the smallest of the reformist parties, opposed the coalition with the Democratic Party, but it had little impact on the election, filling only 1 district and 2 proportional representation, and received a few votes. Yeah. Last year, the KCTU adopted a new political policy. For the first time since the dissolution of the DLP, so more than 10 years later, the first time they adopted new political policy, the KCTU. In the new political policy, the KCTU strongly criticized the fact that after the dissolution of the DLP, many former and current union cadres had become Democratic Party candidates or supported the Democratic Party, and explicitly prohibited similar moves. It was an important progress. But, however, this year, the NL tendency, which has taken control of the KCTU executive, attempted to pass the KCTU's electoral official endorsement of the Progressive Party's electoral alliance with the Democratic Party. A vigorous campaign by delegates and rank-and-file activists against the endorsement unfolded. And the KCTU delegate conference on March 18th ended without a clear conclusion. Despite the president of the KCTU proposed the endorsement, but it failed.
What is March for your group doing? March for Socialism in this context?
Our position?
Yeah. How do you put forward a program to go forward? All these obstacles.
Yeah, of course, we are part of the strong opposition. But I will explain about your question shortly. Although many delegates and rank-and-file activists opposed the electoral coalition with the Democratic Party, they could not see any real alternative for independent working-class politics. The revolutionary socialists were unable to field candidates in this election because of our organizational weakness, our weakness or other revolutionary forces' weaknesses. While it is clear that bourgeois elections cannot change the world, it is also clear that revolutionary socialists have a responsibility to represent the prospect of independent working-class politics as an alternative to the working masses and people, even in the space of bourgeois elections. We know well about that, and we are preparing for that, and we are trying to overcome our weaknesses, limitations. And now we are focusing on mainly 4 tasks. First one is, as I said, building a campaign for organizing a general strike for workers' urgent demands. And the second one is organizing women's strike for the rights and the liberation of women workers and LGBTQ plus workers. The third task we are focusing on is the worker-led climate justice movement. And the fourth one is to organizing anti-militant, anti-war workers movement. We are, through these activities, we are trying to build powerful movement. Enough to enable us to fight in even the bourgeois elections.
I was going to ask about, in Korea there are so many repressive laws, and
Yes.
from time to time people like you guys get locked up in jail and repressed. So my first question is, are there any number of political prisoners that we could support, sending letters of support, demanding their freedom if that's the case? That's one question. The other one is, the American military has so many bases in the Korean peninsula.
Yeah.
And it's constantly threatening North Korea. That's one of their targets. And also, obviously, China.
Yeah.
So, what is the perspective of the Korean working class trying to expel the imperialist forces out of the Korean peninsula and defending, the fourth worker state of North Korea and a revolutionary unification of North Korea through becoming a worker state? How that perspective is. And last but not least, there's one thing called the trade union bureaucracy that sits on the top of the working class and collaborates with the capitalist class. Do you guys strive to have an independent revolutionary line, that will fight the trade union bureaucracy? That's my question.
Let me explain about the last question. Can you explain about the last question? Yes.
Okay. In every country in the world, in the working class, there is a trade union bureaucracy.
Yes. I know. Yeah.
Okay. So, what is your perspective? Do you fight the trade union bureaucracy? What do you do? Okay.
One of the secrets of the rapid growth of Korean capitalism has been maintaining the bad laws, repressing all kinds of workers' movement and revolution movements. For example, his union, the railroad workers' union, has paid $10 million so far as a fines. Yes, so far, $10 million. Yeah, due to their so-called illegal strikes. Whenever they organized their strikes became illegal. But recently, some changes, but naturally, all their strikes became illegal. So they had to suffer from going to prison previously and later paying to tremendous amount of fines. But his union has more than 30,000, previously 40,000 workers. So it is a very strong union, one of the very strong unions. So they can afford a large amount of fines, but in the case of irregular workers, only tens of dozens of workers in the union, they have to endure the tremendous fines with small organizational power. So many irregular workers to have participated in struggles in recent 20 more years, have their own personal debts, fine debts. So they cannot buy a house or maintain their house, and they cannot maintain their bank accounts. Their salaries are confiscating about half by accumulated fines. Yeah, it is.
So they are charged personally. So that those-
Yes, in some cases collectively, in some cases individually, case by case.
Both.
Yes, both. Yeah. So it is a repression on union militancy, and another aspect is national security law, is the repression of freedom of thought. So, according to the national security law, establishing a socialist organization, joining the organization, or reading Marxist books, or even having Marxist books, all these kind of activities can be punished by the laws, according to the law. Yeah, but these days, actually, it was after the general strike in 1996 to 97, the national security law has been considerably weakened. So before the weakening, all members in the socialist organization went to prison when they were attacked. But nowadays, only leaders go to prison. Yeah, difference. Yeah, but for the workers, even harder problem than going to prison is losing their jobs by being fired by companies due to the attacks on national security law. This fact has severely hindered workers' activists from joining socialist organizations. Yeah. Even though they agreed socialism, revolution is socialism, and they are acting just like socialists in their workplaces, they have difficulties joining organization because their responsibility for their family. Yeah. If they are alone, they can join the organization. But if they have 2 or 3 other families and they are responsible for their life, they have big difficulties.
Military bases.
Yes, yeah. The second one is yes. Yes, there are more than 200 military bases, American military bases in South Korea, and we don't know. Any Korean people don't know exactly where the United military bases are in South Korea. it is, yeah. Of course, we know the most famous bases, but the small bases we don't know. Yeah, it is the secret, military secret, and we believe that many of them is not for not for dealing with North Korea. Absolutely, it is for dealing with China, and especially the THAAD base. It is a part of missile defense system, which was introduced in South Korea in 2016-17, was absolutely for dealing with China, and because it is detecting missiles and counter-attacking missiles, but in North Korea, North Korea's attack will be too short for the THAAD system to deal with the missiles. So, yeah. We have fight the presence of U.S. military bases since 1980 Gwangju uprising. Because in the Gwangju uprising, the U.S. blatantly showed their support for military dictatorship, and it was the real turning point of the awareness of Korean working masses and people about the real nature of the United States. And then fighting against U.S. imperialism is the most basic common sense of all Korean progressive movement. If you are a progressive one, no matter you are a social democrat or nationalist or something else, you basically you have to be an anti-imperialist. It is the most basic element of Korean progressive movement. So we are absolutely in the base of this tradition, and so the expulsion of U.S. Army from Korean Peninsula has been the main argument of our movement. But there are a lot of stories. There have been a lot of stories, and recently we are witnessing that the North Korean leader say North Korea is no longer pursuing reunification. How do you think about it? As I said, the NL tendency cannot solve this problem. In their perspective, it cannot be happened. So I think it needs a lot of explanations. So I want to check your understanding for reducing our discussion, but it is some difficult. So I try to reduce my explanation. I think the reunification of Korean Peninsula itself cannot be progressive. At least after the bourgeois, some part of capitalists in South Korea began to pursue reunification. as a expansion of South Korean capitalism to North Korea. So after that, and it was driven by the Kim Dae-jung, the former South Korean president. Yeah. After that, the problem is what kind of reunification? Yeah, bourgeois reunification, or one state, two system reunification, or socialist reunification. It is problem. And the South Korean position has been, of course, bourgeois capitalist reunification. The South Korean capitalist bourgeois. What is the position of North Korea and NL tendency? What has been? It has been one state, two system, one state, two system reunification. Even though they have not clarified it, but recently the North Korean leader clarified what their policy has been. The Kim Jong-un blatantly said that we pursued one state, two system reunification, but the South Korean bourgeoisie or the South Korea itself has repeatedly betrayed us. So now I conclude that with South Korea, the reunification based on one state, two system, one state, two system, is impossible. So now I would not pursue such reunification anymore. Yeah.
How many unionists, trade unionists are in jail in Korea? Are the construction union leaders in jail?
Yeah, around 40 members, including their leaders, went to prison, but some of them were free. So maybe 20 to 30 workers, construction workers, are in jail, and another workers have to be included, I think. I have no clear statistics right now. I think we need to pursue revolutionary socialist reunification of Korean Peninsula. Yeah. And it have to include the workers' revolution in South Korea, and I think in North Korea, also in North Korea. Yeah. It can be some controversial, but I want to show you my position. Yeah. It is not a good time for the debate. Anyway, I want to tell you my basic standing point. Yeah. And the third point, you are asking the union bureaucrats problem. The KCTU was established by a strong rank and file struggle against bureaucracy. Before the KCTU, there was a FTKU, a very strong company union, very strong business union, and the KCTU was based on strike wave from below in 1987. It destroyed, it denied it destroyed the system of bureaucratic FTK control system, and it abolished. And then it established another real union. It was the KCTU. So even though the KCTU also has been considerably bureaucratized nowadays, it has still considerable aspects of democratic tradition. This year, even though the president of the KCTU pursued the endorsement of his party in the KCTU, but he failed. Yeah, we still can fight against the president, and we can force him to defeat. Yeah. But even in the KCTU, fighting against bureaucracy is very important task, not only for socialists, but also for the real working class activists. So we are fighting against bureaucracy through organizing militant rank and file activism. So, for example, I am in a socialist organization, but my organization is trying to organizing activities in a militant rank and file organization. So I am also in the National Workers' Meeting to restore grassroots struggles and realize working class solidarity. It is broader militant rank and file activist organization. Yeah, it is the most important point that we are approaching to fight against the union bureaucracy. So this rank and file activist organization is a kind of united front organization. This organization has include other political tendencies. If they agree with fighting against bureaucracy, building grassroots struggles, they can organize activities with us. Yeah.
Going back to China and North Korea.
Yeah.
I don't think you really said what is the characterization? How does March for Socialism characterize the class character of North Korea and China? Because you said that one of the four main parts of your struggle is to fight against imperialism, and South Korea, U.S. imperialism is allied force. So, yeah, what is the characterization of China and North Korea?
We consider China as a clear capitalism and one of the most important imperialist country. Of course, China has some other aspects to be called imperialism, but the most important aspect of the country is imperialism. It is our basic understanding. And we characterize North Korea as a bureaucratic capitalism. And especially nowadays, North Korea began to escape from is long-time isolation. Since the 1990s, the early 1990s, when the USSR collapsed and China began to the policy of reform and opening up. So the announcement of the North Korean leader that we no longer pursue reunification means represents their confidence of their future, because they are not in isolation. They are now in backup from Russia and China, so now they can develop their nuclear arsenals as much as they want, and they can escape from their economic difficulties. So now they don't need their political pretext. The North Korean leader blatantly showed that. It is our understanding. So the U.S. imperialism is the most important villain of this planet, the most important enemy of our class. But there are many other imperialist countries, and China has been one of them. And nowadays, the U.S.-China conflict has become a very important factor to define the situation, world situation, especially in the East Asian situation. Yeah, this is our understanding.
Maybe you can talk about the relationship of Korean to Chinese workers.
Yes.
The perspective of that. But before you do that, I would say that the position of our committee, United Front Committee for a Labor Party, is that China is an imperialist country. I mean, that it is exporting capital, private and public. It's the largest exporter of capital, private and public, in the world. And it has the most number of billionaires in the world. They're members of the Communist Party. But this export of capital, private and public, is resulting in exploitation of workers all over the world, and particularly in Africa, in Namibia, and Zambia, and Zimbabwe. They own mines, they own all the mines, and they control the workers. And they also exploit workers and bust unions internationally. So it's a very reactionary force for the working class in these countries.
The state of workers in China and North Korea. As you may know, in North Korea, workers don't have any right for independent movement. Yeah, really any right. And we still cannot have seen any meaningful struggles and movement in North Korea. Can we believe it is because North Korea is a really good place? No. Our answer is the opposite. North Korea is the worst place for the workers to organize their own movement. And we need to also watch to the state of workers in China. Around in 2010s, there were significant movements, independent workers' movement in China, but the repression started again, and especially in 2018 to 19, the so-called basic workers in Guangzhou Canton was repressed by the regime. Maybe it was the last attempt for the workers to build and maintain their independent union in China. And after the basic repression, there has been no independent workers' movement in China, openly, at least openly. But as far as we know, there have been still various activities, underground activities in China for workers to organize themselves independently. Then China is experiencing very serious economic crisis from now on. We believe that in the near future, we can see another picture of Chinese workers' movement, and we expect that it can largely affect the state of North Korean workers. And recently, in January, there was a small but meaningful accident in North Korean exported workers in China. They experienced deferred wage problem, and they organized uprising. It was very rare case in the North Korean workers. According to some reports, the participants were more than 2,000, and the regime changed the management and paid their wages, but the rumor was widely spread among the exported workers in China. So, if the news story is imported into North Korea, it could affect the readiness of North Korean workers, we think.
Okay, we're gonna, one more question, then we have to wrap it up at 5:30.
Did you have a question?
No, just quickly, the way I understood is that North Korea, they don't have salary system, pay system. They get paid provided by the housing and food. And free, if you have able to go free school, or if we able to get medical attention, that might be free. But the countryside is very difficult even get those things. And I understand that they also export labor, and the pay is they don't get paid directly. Pay go to the North Korean government, and the food and others are provided. After that, in that kind of situation, it would be very difficult to organize workers in North Korea. How can they revolt? And the way they were from children, the way educated was the Kim's family here is a god. So it's going to be very difficult.
Yeah, but as far as we know, the ration system in North Korea already bankrupt. Already bankrupt. The recent defectors from North Korea have said that, especially from countryside out of Pyongyang, they haven't received any ration of food, and they have been out of healthcare system, public healthcare system. So they have had to purchase medicines in private market to deal with their diseases because they can't go any hospitals. So the recent North Korean situation has to be carefully inspected, we believe.